Iowa. Mr. Nunn is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate this entire panel for being here. We've talked a lot about the big picture aspect of the defense industrial base. I'd really like to hone in on some of those cutting edge technologies and the smaller elements that help our defense industrial base be so both fluid and successful. For a while I worked with the Defense Innovation Unit out in California, really bringing in some of the technology piece as a liaison there before I took this exciting job. But now that I look back in Iowa, I recognize immediately we've got a ton of small businesses that are helping in the defense sector. RMA Armaments, Wellman Dynamics, and then of course some of the bigger ones like Cullen Aerospace all play a critical role, all have a component in our hometowns. So the time is now for the U.S. to gain a competitive advantage, Mr. Chairman, and the defense technology manufacturing side of this, I really want to begin. Dr. Nadler, you've obviously worked at the Department of Defense, you've seen this. Do private sector defense tech startups have an easy follow-on path to get into government procurement and acquisition?
Sir, they do not. 15, 20 years ago in the Department of Defense, all of the flag officers were saying, why can't I have the technology that exists in the commercial sector? I look at my iPhone, why do I have this cumbersome equipment here? Well, and there weren't many startups. Now there are a ton of them. American entrepreneurship is very strong. A lot of people in the tech sector want to help defense, and they can do things sometimes 10 to 20 times cheaper. However, the path into the Department of Defense, because of the DFARS, is extremely hard. And the Defense Production Act could open up a lot of competition if used properly.
Now, talk to us about some of the things that could help a startup company, whether it's something in artificial intelligence or whether it's a guy making a better armament or body protective vest, be able to get on with the our Department of Defense today.
Well, one is Title I can be used to give them a priority allocation for the order. Then the CapEx is always an issue. And defense equipment has hardware, and it's CapEx intensive, and CapEx is a very unfavorable thing in the U.S. economy compared to Germany, Korea, or Japan. So the DPA Title III grants could enable them to have the infrastructure that they need to produce that hardware.
Thank you, Doctor. I think it's really important that we also look at what the need base is. Mr. Zakim, you've talked with us just here today that we have moved from just in time to just out of time. Let's be judicious about this. Does the DIB currently have the ability to meet a surge capacity if we needed it right now?
I can't think of an example where we have a surge capacity across the defense requirements.
And we have ongoing conflicts in Europe, in the Middle East. It's depleted what backfill we already have. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. That's why the supplemental is so essential.
If China were to invade Taiwan today, Mr. Chairman, one of the questions I have for you, Mr. Zakim, is would the U.S. be properly positioned to react in a sufficient manner for us to be successful in that conflict?
Well, we certainly have our defense leadership dealing with this and getting ready for it every day, but the way I would think about it, particularly as it relates to the Defense Production Act, is what happens if it's a protracted conflict? That's the question this committee needs to internalize. The first week, the first 2 weeks, the first three weeks, we should be all right. But if it goes on longer, and as we look at conflicts that they've played out in recent years, they do, that's where we will feel the strain, and that's where we will regret not properly capitalizing this particular authority.
So like any good military officer, we've identified the threat. I want to talk about solutions now. Talk to us a little bit about what the DPA might do to mitigate some of the shortfalls within the DIB.
Well, I've outlined a bunch of my testimony. Dr. Nadler emphasized permitting, which I have in my testimony as well. But one that you made me think of was a conversation I recently had with the CEO of a new startup, venture-backed entity, the kind that you would have engaged with at DIU, put in for DPA support. 18 months later, he is still waiting. And this would be a game-changing manufacturing technology that would actually remove a requirement for tooling in manufacturing because of 3D printing capability. That sort of timeline doesn't reflect the urgency of the problem.
I want to thank the panel. I think the key takeaway here is that we have so much innate capability here in the United States, ready to be leveraged. The innovation alone to be able to bring to the battlefield to make a time-changing success, not only in loss of life, but in the scale of capacity to be first shooter successful. And yet we're making our own restrictions on this. 18 months is a kind example. I've got guys who are waiting years to be able to on-ramp this. DPA is a great opportunity for us to be able to leverage this. Thank you to the panel. I yield the remainder of my time.